had, and I brought it with me. It's over here on the table, and I'll show it to anybody who wants to see it. We took a armature from an electric motor, and we stripped all the copper wire off of it. There's no magnets on it. We put 2 bearings on the shaft, and if you attach a DC current to either side of this armature and give it a little nudge, this thing will start to spin, and it will accelerate until it flies apart, but it gets too hot for that. We disconnect it in 4 or 5 seconds. These things are very fast. It's incredible. And I took it to the conference in Denver a few months ago where all these electrical engineers, all the foremost people in the world, and not one of them could tell me how it did what it did. We since found out that DC current is not really DC current. It is an oscillating current or an alternating current that has a frequency beyond the gamma range. So to all intents and purposes, it is a DC current, but in actuality, and here again we get in our precision, it is an alternating current, and it has to be an alternating current, or that thing wouldn't spin. I know that much about it. We have to have positive and negative forces going on, or we don't get the Raleigh wave, the Lamb wave going around in circles. Another question here?
I have either read or seen something in the 40s where they had 2 counter-rotating fields, and I don't know how they did this. They made a spacecraft. Somebody did this, and it would disappear, and he could fly around, be conscious inside, and see, but he would not be able to be seen outside. And they did this in New Mexico, I believe, and went 30, 40 miles back and forth in a few seconds. So some of this, when it gets going that fast, just becomes unable for us to see, I think, is part of it, without this, if the material doesn't destroy itself.
Yeah.
So I don't know about the counter fields, how they did that. They were going in different directions, so that DC would be negative and positive in that case.
Right. That's a very good question. I've never heard of that particular instance either, but it brings up another aspect of this physics. If we could maintain the algorithm, Henry was talking about how the fractal resemblance of this molecule exists. If we could maintain that mathematical algorithm, maintain its integrity, and we could increase the velocity of spin on this molecule, it would shrink. It would pop to the next size smaller instantly. That's the quantum leap of quantum physics, by the way. When the energy increases or decreases, we get this release or condensation of energy. If we could do that, this thing would shrink into a subatomic particle level, maintaining its integrity, and guess what? You would be invisible. Now, if you could slow it all down all at the same time, it's like a computer program. If you slow it down all the time, all of a sudden it would pop back into visibility. Pop? Invisible. Nonsensible.
That's how you're going to explain the teleportation of objects.
Right.
Because in the teleportation of objects, the visible object has to shrink to the point that it becomes invisible, and then obviously it decelerates and becomes visible again.
Pretty much the same, yeah. It's kind of like a Star Trek thing where they transport people. I don't think it's feasible that we could ever disassociate an individual and then reassociate, maybe, who knows what's happening next year. But if we could maintain that mathematical integrity of it, it would be a fairly simplistic thing, much simpler. That, by the way, that kind of idea may explain some of this UFO type stuff we've been hearing about. If they could maintain that integrity and shrink to that energy level, all of a sudden velocity of propagation becomes infinite. They could cruise the universe in minutes.
Phenomena have been observed all the time. I mean, I have observed them and experienced them myself. So this is not just theory. This is, experiential reality.
Teleportation is a little bit different in that the gravitic component. Here we get back to another whole aspect of this science. Keely maintained that gravity, magnetism, and electricity were intimately intertwined with each other. Just as I showed the picture of the vibration, these charts, I gotta make a statement here. These charts, I keep using the same chart over and over and over again, and I keep using, as I talk about one, I talk about the other. And this is a holistic science. It's not just take this one thing and this is what it's all about. It takes a certain amount of time and energy to study all these different little things, and then all of a sudden you get the picture. And it is real simple. You just got to keep going over it and going over it and going over it. This gets back to, we're going to start with the sun to explain this thing about electricity, magnetism, and gravity. The sun heats the earth, they tell us, and the sun lights the earth, they tell us. And then they say, well, you know, if you want to maintain a refrigerated area, you need vacuum as the best insulator against heat. And then they say there's 93 million miles of vacuum between the sun and us. And I say, well, something's not right here if the heat can come from the sun to the earth through all that vacuum. And there really is no physics to explain that. One guy will label it, and he'll say, well, it's radiation that heats here. Well, a label doesn't explain anything. All it does is tags it. It's like saying an apple falls to the ground because of gravity. That doesn't explain what's happening. And radiation doesn't explain what's happening in this particular case. Keely had an explanation for this. You know, if there was heat coming from the sun and light coming from the sun as heat and light, interplanetary space would be full of light and it would be hot. And it isn't. It's cold and it's dark.
Before we go into that, we're going to have to change pace. Could we take about a 5-minute break?
Fine. 5-minute break. On the screen, the three fundamental modes of any vibration: longitudinal, transverse being at 90 degrees, and then a Raleigh wave rotating at 90 degrees to those two. You can't have one without the other two. It's physically impossible. They are intertwined components, one within the other. In the electromagnetic scale of forces, if you start at 1 hertz down here and you double your frequency every octave on up, as you go through the octaves, I believe it's at the 21st octave, you get a mode shift. So it goes from predominance to the longitudinal to predominance to the transverse. And then as you go higher than that, the predominance changes again, probably to the Raleigh. Now, Keely alluded to these shifts in modes according to frequency, but we haven't had them verified yet. But I believe they are there. That would describe in part the difference between sound that we hear and light that we see. Moving along, part of that, what brought this up was how the sun can heat the earth through 93 million miles of vacuum. Keely maintained that a force called the polar forces, the celestial triune forces coming from the sun, are balanced in a harmonic fashion. In other words, they're intertwined together concordantly, just as you would a rope that has 3 braids to it. You twist this rope together and you can't see any of the 3 braids until you twist this rope backwards, and then you can start to see the 3 modes of vibration inherent in the one mode, the one vibration. And accordingly, this is kind of like the scalar stuff that you're hearing about now, where you have